Or did you?
I haven't met everybody.
Okay,
So
let's do that then.
I know about half the committee and I don't know
Why
how.
don't we start with Representative Nelson?
Yeah, Richard Nelson from Orleans One, which is Derby. I met you across the road a few weeks
At
ago.
our breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes.
I came in late.
Yep. Excellent. Nice to
Yeah.
meet you.
Jed Lipsky, my one.
We've met, but again, I'm Leland Morgan. I represent Grand Isle County and West Milton.
David Durfee, Shaftesbury.
There's Matt Barnard.
Good afternoon.
Frank Burkett.
Nice to meet you, Brett. Brett. So I apologize, Representative Burt.
People call me both.
I know you've got limited amounts of time, so I'll be as brief as I can. So nice to see all of you. I'm Dana Duran. I'm Executive Director of a trade association here in Vermont called the Professional Logging Contractors of the Northeast. I know about half of you were able to come to our legislative breakfast back in December, and I appreciate those who were able to come and understand it was a tough time of year, so not everybody could be there. So I've just wanted to come in today to introduce our organization, who we represent in the state, a little bit of background on us. I've also given you some literature. So read it, use it to start your wood stove tonight if you want to. But it is paper and we're firm believers in paper. So when in doubt, print, always get a receipt whenever you're at the grocery store or when you get fuel, if you buy fuel. So paper is a good thing, but I've given you an overview of our organization and two of our latest magazines, and the summer edition, which is the back copy, is actually focuses on the floods here in Vermont this past summer and has a bunch of our members here in Vermont who are involved in the flood relief efforts, especially cleaning up rivers, streams, et cetera, after the flood. So brought those with you or with me. We do send these out to the legislature electronically, but I figured I'd bring paper copies for this committee. So I'll give you a brief background on our organization. Some of you have seen this, some of you haven't. So we'll be brief. So we're, again, a nonprofit trade association. We're based in Maine. We represent contractors now actually in New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. We now have, I think, 6 members in New York. We have 25 members and growing here in the state of Vermont. Logging and trucking companies. We were started in 1995 by three logging families in the state of Vermont. We existed in Maine only in Maine until 2023, until contractors here in Vermont kind of joined forces and said they'd like to have us come over. So that's a little bit of background on our organization. There's our mission. I'll skip over that just in the interest of time. You can see our membership on the map behind us. That are here in Vermont as well as in other states. So we essentially represent from the stump to the mill. We don't represent the rest of the supply chain, meaning we don't represent the landowner community. We don't represent the mills, regardless if it's pulp and paper, secondary manufacturing, whatever it might be. We exist from forest to mill and all points in between. So we've got members who are sole proprietors. Interest of full disclosure, Representative Lipsky is a member. They could own a cable skidder and a chainsaw. They may own one piece of equipment. They may own all pieces of equipment and have a contract with a landowner. They may own trucks. They may own only trucks. But essentially, if they harvest, process, and transport forest products, they're eligible to be a member of ours, and that's who we represent. A little bit about who we are. Those are the kind of the 6 or 7 things. I'll run down again through these quickly as to what we do. So advocacy being the biggest piece, and I'll get into each one of these very quickly. Economic impact. So this is something we're working on now here in the state of Vermont, specifically the latest data that we have in Vermont on timber harvesting, specifically jobs, economic output, average wages is actually from 2017. So we've published 3 of these documents for the state of Maine in 2015, 2020, and then again in 2023. So we want to create a similar one for specifically here in Vermont. So we know we can benchmark exactly how many jobs there are, economic output, et cetera. So again, advocacy. These are the things that we've done in Washington, D.C. over the last decade or 15 years specifically. I'll highlight the one at the bottom, U.S. Forest Service. So we worked with Vermont Forest Parks and Recs to help them apply for a $500,000 grant through the U.S. Forest Service to help with crane mats for contractors in Vermont. We're pleased to say that Vermont did receive those funds, and they're going to be putting that out to RFP for a service provider to run that program. But we assisted with that this past fall. And then there are some other examples of federal legislation we've been very involved with. Master Logger Certification Program. So our organization started the Master Logger Program back in the year 2000. We now run that today. We have about 20 Master Logger certified contractors here in the state of Vermont. What does Master Logger mean? It's essentially certification of your practices in the forest by a third party. So not to use Representative Lipsy again, but his company is Master Logger certified. It is not a training program. It is actually independent auditing and verification of the practices in the forest. And you don't declare yourself certified. You don't have someone else just say you've been to a training pro, and you actually have a third party that comes out and audits your practices. So we created that program in 2000. It's now in 20 states in the United States and in 3 other foreign countries. So it's a program we're very, very proud of. There are about 150 Master Logger certified companies in the Northeast specifically. We created a dividend program for our members with Acadia Insurance almost 25 years ago. That's a huge benefit to our members. Insurance is very costly in this industry. And so that's a big benefit to our members. We do a lot of training for our members. Each year we do annual safety trainings. We had one here in Vermont back in May, had about 80 people go through it. We also have an online interactive training program for new entrants into the industry that's open to all individuals in the industry here in the state of Vermont. Again, I'm just kind of quickly running through these. We created a mechanized logging operations and forest trucking program with the community college system in Maine about 8 years ago. We'd like to bring that to Vermont, maybe work with Vermont State University if they can bring their forestry program back and try to bring that over to Vermont. We've trained about 100 new folks that have entered the industry in the state of Maine, and I think this would be a really, really nice opportunity for Vermont as well. And then we are involved in a philanthropic program that also raises money for children's hospitals, including the University of Vermont Children's Hospital. We've raised almost $2.5 million that have gone to the hospitals since the mid-1990s. So that's a big impact part of what contractors do. So briefly, let me give you an overview of logging in Vermont. And again, this is old data. This is 2017 data, but 76%, you heard a lot, some of this from Catherine Servideo yesterday from Vermont Forest Parks and Rec, but some of it you didn't because she didn't get down into the layers, so to speak, and peel the onion back. So direct economic impact of logging was 91 million back in 2017, direct labor income 50 million, direct value added 52.8, direct logging and trucking jobs about 1,700, and then 57% of logging jobs are part of other industries in Vermont. All right, so what's happening? Again, you heard a lot of this from Catherine, but we'll be very specific. What's happened with logging and trucking, especially in the last 4 years, both here in Vermont, but throughout the Northeast. You've had mill closures in Vermont. You lost Putney Paper. You've lost 2 sawmills in the last year and a half. Overall, 40% of the logging capacity in the Northeast, regardless of state, is gone in the last 4 years. Much of that has to do with what's happened with pulp and paper markets and the losses in pulp and paper, especially in the state of Maine, because Vermonters sell wood both ways, east and west. Maine has been really hit really hard in the last 4 years. And then sawlog markets, because of high interest rates over the last 2.5 years, it has impacted all house construction across the board, renovations. People are not spending money. So essentially sawlog markets are now down in terms of pricing, and that extends itself back to the logging community. And then weather. I know Representative Nelson, you asked about this yesterday. So weather has been a major impact on contractors. We've been in front of this committee last year, especially talking about this subject: wet winters, wet summers, floods, non-frozen grounds has been really a big issue for contractors to work. Sam Lincoln talked to this committee last year. Lincoln Farm Timber Harvesting essentially worked about 120 days, normally works about 180 days. This was in 2024. So again, big issues. So Vermont legislature, very thankful to this committee last session for the assistance that this committee brought and the work that we did. A couple of successes. So there was $1 million in the big bill, the big appropriations bill last session that was given to Vermont Forest Parks and Rec to help contractors with water quality and resilience measures. I know Representative Nelson, you asked about this kind of specifically yesterday. So this money was put in the bill last year, passed, governor signed it, and now Vermont Forest Parks and Rec is about to award the contract, we believe, to get this funding out over the next 18 to 24 months to contractors in Vermont. This is a big help because they don't have ways to offset all of the AMPs, the resilience measures, et cetera. So this is going to be a really, really important piece moving forward. Also in the appropriations bill, there was funding for master logger scholarships to help contractors become master logger certified. This committee dealt with the timber trespass bill. I think you have received or will receive from the Vermont Attorney General their report and update. Excuse me. As a result of the legislation that passed to criminalize timber trespass in the last session, I participated on the study committee along with Sam Lincoln. I know Representative Lipsky was part of those conversations, as were several other organizations. So we worked with this committee on that. Vermont Economic Development Authority, through the miscellaneous bill last session, changed some language to allow contractors to qualify for some of VITA's programming, which is very helpful. And then lastly, there were some tweaks and changes made to Stored Solar's purchase power agreement that were made in the last session, which were very beneficial, again, to contractors for consumer protection. So those were some pieces of last session. Looking to this session, Forest Future Roadmap. I'm not going to belabor that. You heard all about that yesterday. Our big legislative initiative this session, we really have two. So it's the second bullet up on the screen: purchase and use sales tax exemption and sales tax exemption for parts for heavy duty trucks that are used in the industry. This is an important piece to help. You heard about what's happened with markets. You've heard what's happened with contractors. Basically, Vermont is at a competitive disadvantage from a parity perspective. New York has not had a sales tax on heavy-duty trucks that are used in logging for over 20 years. New Hampshire does not charge any sales tax on any purchases. Maine is actually trying to enact this very exemption this session, and then we are bringing this forward to the state of Vermont. So this would be a huge help to bring parity to the industry. It's Representative Lipsky's bill. He just got his jacket, so we would love bipartisan support. So hopefully this committee can sign on as co-sponsors to that. We have a couple of pieces, the third bullet and the fourth bullet we're working on with Vermont Forest Parks and Rec. They don't necessarily mean legislation this session, but trying to make sure that state harvests actually have contractors who are doing the work and getting the bids. And then we'd like to see some changes to the UVA program. And last one, revolving loan program for low ground pressure equipment. The Clean Water Board approved for their budget some funding to help with low interest loans for logging contractors to buy new equipment. That budget now comes to this body and to the Senate to be approved this session. So we would really appreciate the support in getting that done. That would be a really, really important piece to get low interest loan money out there to help contractors buy new equipment. So that's a little bit about us and who we are and our priorities. I'm the quote lobbyist. I'm also the executive director of the association. I will be here probably weekly. Happy to answer any questions you have today, but feel free to reach out. You should have my contact information in the documents I gave you. So hopefully I'm almost on schedule.
Yes, thank you. And just so that the committee knows and anybody watching, Dana had asked if he could speak today, and we knew we had this event this afternoon, but thought we'd at least spend a few minutes hearing about the organization and getting a little more insight into that sector of the supply chain. So thank you for the overview. I know we've got the bill that you just mentioned, probably end up here, and we will be taking some testimony from the AG's office on the report that you mentioned. And there may be other opportunities when you're back. As you said, you're probably going to be back soon as next week. So we probably haven't seen the last of you.
Most likely not. And I would also offer to the committee, if you'd like to get out to see a timber harvest on one of your tours this session, we would be very pleased to try to organize that. I think there's no better way to learn about timber harvesting and what happens with equipment and what's happening with contractors than actually to see a live harvest and see them operate. So if that's something that you'd like me to organize, I'd be very willing to put that together, hopefully somewhere within, short distance of the Capitol. There's a lot going on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Thank you,
having me.
Dave.
Yes.